Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the March 15th, 2022 Post Falls City Council meeting. Just to make everyone aware, we do have two public hearings tonight. And if you care to speak at either one, there are forms on the podium in the back. Please fill them up, turn them in to Rhiannon up front, and we will give you time to talk. Rhiannon, please note that all council members are present. And we do have an announcement. Want to acknowledge and give recognition to one of our own for being named Permit Tech of the Year by the Idaho Association of Building Officials. Heidi Varner has been with the city for approximately 5 years and has been an incredible asset to the Community Development Department and Building Division. She is always ready to assist anyone that walks through the doors or calls City Hall, even if it's a question outside of her wheelhouse. Her willingness to not only help the public, but her fellow co-workers is recognizable on its own. For a state organization to select her out of all the permit technicians throughout the state of Idaho speaks volumes about her work ethic and dedication to her position. Heidi is on the board of several associations relating to the building industry, including the Energy Circuit Rider Program, North Idaho Code Enforcers, and the Permit Technician Board, to name a few. Her representation of the City of Post Falls within these organizations is highly valued. We're extremely proud of her and proud to have her as a member of the team. So congratulations to Heidi. And we do have the annual report on the Post Falls Urban Renewal Agency. And we've got a new presenter this year, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Mayor Jacobson, City Council, my name is Joseph Johns. I'm the new Executive Director with the Post Falls Urban Renewal Agency. So
Joseph, how long have you been with the agency now?
my first day was in October, and I will make reference to our prior director in the presentation.
I was going to say, I knew it. You haven't been with him too long.
All right. Well, Mayor Jacobson, City Council, it's my honor to present to you the 2021 Post Falls Urban Renewal Agency Annual Report. A little bit about the agency. Idaho Code 50-20 requires this report to be presented by March 31st of each year. The agency was created in 1991, and our office is located upstairs in the Chamber Building, across the street, or across the parking lot. The 2021 officers were Jerry Baltzell, Chairman, Larry Carsonson, Vice Chair, Lynn Crosby, the Treasurer. Monthly commission meetings are held the third Thursday of each month. Most of the agency activities fall under the following committees: Finance and Policy, District Review, or Communication, Property, and Personnel. Workshops are scheduled on an as-needed basis. The mission statement of the Post Falls Urban Renewal Agency is to encourage sound economic and community improvement that enhances the overall quality of life in Post Falls by providing and improving infrastructure, attracting jobs, and enhancing citizen safety and health. The Centerpoint, Expo, Tullamore, and Post Falls technology districts, which you can see on the slide here, spread around, all have proponent developers who build public infrastructure and pay for it up front. The risk lies solely on them to bring in new businesses, which result in increased property values and tax increment. Increment collected by the county is remitted on a monthly basis to the agency, and we reimburse the proponent in February and August of each year. Increment being collected in the East Post Falls, South and Central areas. East Post Falls runs along Highway 41 there. Their southern portion is down along I-90, Central's in the middle. Tullamore is up between Prairie and 16th there. excuse me, they all have proponent developers. Pardon me, lost my place. So increment being collected in the East Post Falls South Central districts is funding sewer improvements in the East Post Falls district, funding road intersection improvements, and provided for the early payoff of the Greens Ferry overpass in November, saving $51,000 in interest payments. The agency is currently undertaking the closing process in the Expo District. The Expo District has over $4.6 million of approved infrastructure-related costs over its duration. Over $60 million of taxable value will return to the underlying taxing districts upon closure. This slide shows the total approved infrastructure costs in each district and the remaining obligation at December 31st, 2021. The agency rebated over $5.4 million back to the taxing entities from the East Post Falls District, as there were no major projects being funded in 2009 and 2012. Centerpoint and East Post Falls will begin the closing process this year. Anywhere along here, if you have a question, don't hesitate, or you can ask me at the end. An interruption's just fine. This slide shows a 3-year comparison of tax increment received by district. The overall increment in 2021 decreased 4.5%. With the current and upcoming district closures, together with the newly formed districts coming online the next 3 years, will bring significant change to this information. Once a proponent completes public improvements and they are dedicated to the city, the eligible construction costs are approved by the agency and added to their obligation. The agency reviewed and approved 2 orders of approval in 2021 totaling over $243,000. In August, $15,000 was approved in the Post Falls Technology District for the reimbursement of the district plan fee, and in October, $228,391 was approved in the Expo District for Creative Way and Expo Parkway North costs. Financial highlights are based on the agency's annual audit. Increment revenue decreased due to district closure and new development within our URDs. Interest revenue decreased due to declining interest rates together with decreased equity in the state local government investment pool. Our cash decreased as anticipated with funding of sewer projects in the East Post Falls District. Loan liabilities decreased over the fiscal year as the agency continued to pay down the loan at Washington Trust Bank, which required a 10% loan reserve. Proponent obligations decreased due to payments made to district proponents for approved public infrastructure. And our actual operating expenses were almost $99,000 less than the budgeted amount. In 2021, we had Kenworth break ground in the Expo URD and made significant progress toward an operational facility. The agency funded $2,700,592 for sewer improvements in the East Post Falls District, and it's anticipated that we will fund another $1.49 million in 2022 to complete the sewer improvements along Highway 41, which includes the lift station and EQ basin on 12th Avenue. Greens Ferry overpass was paid off early. This occurred in November when the agency was able to pay or apply the loan reserve of $237,375,000, together with $1,171,446 from the local government investment pool capital investments account to fully pay off the Greens Ferry overpass loan 22 months early. The early payoff resulted in over $51,000 of interest payment savings. As districts close, this table shows the estimated amounts that will go back to the taxing entities and the taxpayer. The numbers are based on 2020 levy rates and increment revenues, which are subject to change when the districts actually close. As you can see from this recap slide, when the Urban Renewal Agency has completed our job, a huge amount of new development tax increment will be returned to the taxing entities and the taxpayers, not only the year the district closes, but for every year in the future. This is a huge benefit to each of the taxing entities and every taxpayer. A total of $4.1 million over the next couple of years may afford our elected officials and city council leaders, city and county leaders, the opportunity to explore fiscal budgetary options and or reductions. The success and achievements of the Post Falls Urban Renewal Agency would not be possible without the dedicated service to the community by many working together cooperatively to get the work done. At this time, I'd like to give particular acknowledgement to Larry Carsonson for 14 years of outstanding public service as a Post Falls Urban Renewal Commissioner before passing away in December. Our community will miss him. Diane Fountain retired January 6th, 2022, after staffing the agency for 12 years, serving as executive director for 5.5 years during that time. And the city of Post Falls staff and administration for their dedicated work and cooperation with the agency on the East Post Falls Urban Renewal District, Highway 41 sewer projects, Cecil Mullin and Cecil pole line intersection improvements, and of course the formation of the downtown and the Pleasant View urban renewal districts. As this presentation comes to a close, I'd like to note that the agency is closing its 5th urban renewal district with tax increment remittance occurring through 2022. The agency will initiate the closing of its 6th and 7th urban renewal districts, East Post Falls and Center Point, in 2022. And we had a new commissioner join us in January named Melissa Jeltness. Again, urban renewal and tax increment financing are the most significant tools available for attracting businesses and economic development, promoting job creation, and encouraging development of blighted and underutilized areas. All of us at the Post Falls Urban Renewal Agency would like to thank the mayor and the city council and the city staff and administration for all your willingness to work in partnership with the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph, and welcome aboard. I can't tell you how many times when I've spoken to different groups regarding urban renewal, even those that don't like urban renewal. As a matter of fact, one gentleman, I won't mention his name, he says, well, Post Falls really ticks me off because I don't like urban renewal, but if it's done right, it's done in Post Falls. We have, as you saw, we're going to be closing our 6th and 7th districts. We
Correct.
were the first agency to close a district in the state of Idaho. We identify the projects, we get the work done, and we close them out early. And I think that's a testament to the good work and the hard work of the Post Falls Urban Renewal Agency. So we appreciate you, and we appreciate all the commissioners and the work they've done. I think you've done a fine job utilizing urban renewal for what it's for. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll pass that on.
That wasn't so bad, was it?
Are there any amendments to the agenda tonight?
There are none tonight, sir.
Are there any declarations of conflict? Site visits, ex parte communications. Seeing none, would you please present the consent calendar?
Item A is minutes from the March 1st, 2022 City Council meeting. Item B is payables, February 22nd through March 7th, 2022. Item C is contract with Asphalt Pros for Park Trail and Parking Lot Seal Coat and Stripe. Item D is Elm Place Subdivision Master Development Agreement. Item E is January Cash and Investment Report from the Finance Department. Item F is Legal Services Case Management Software. And item G is Release of Obligation Constrained and Subdivision Development Agreement from the Expo at the Post Falls Subdivision.
Any questions on consent?
I'd move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Rhiannon, please take the roll.
Shove.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. We're now down to public hearings, and again, anyone wishing to speak, please fill out a form on the podium and turn it in up front. And with that, I will open the first public hearing, which is the Hughes annexation. Right up here, sir. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Jacobson, Council President Thorson, John Manley, Planning Manager, here to introduce the staff report for the Hughes annexation, file number ANNX 10/2021. The applicant is Ace Solutions LLC, representing the owner, Hughes Trust. They're requesting for you tonight to approve the requested annexation with that recommended RM zoning associated with the 103 annexation request into the city of Post Falls. With the residential mixed zoning district, there is a development agreement that was attached in the staff report, Exhibit S4. At the February 8th Planning and Zoning meeting, you can see in your packet that the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend, if this was approved, the annexation, that they would recommend the RM to go along with that. Project location is, as you see here, in the red hatched area southwest of the intersection of Meyer and Prairie, a bit east of Highway 41. What you see here is the proposed bubble map that goes along with that development agreement. So the plan is here, I'm going to go into some of the development agreement discussion, then go into some of the zone change criteria, which involves some of the annexation goals and policies that are for your consideration for this annexation request. So this is the bubble map. As you see here, the font is fairly small. So I tried to color code it a little bit easier. So for talking points, what you see in the red hatch checkerboard, that's where the proposal is for the commercial multifamily areas with the residential mixed. You can see here that with the residential mix, it allows for multifamily up to 20% of the land, and for a proposal to have up to 10% for neighborhood commercial office uses. So that's what the balance is kind of depicting, how they were proposing breaking it up. So going beyond that red checkered area, you have the yellow diagonal areas. That's an area where they're proposing some single family twin home product at about 10% of the land. Where you see on the far east, the green angled areas, about 12 acres, that's where they're proposing to do either a private school and or a single family development at that area. The remaining, the yellow, that would be typical single family development. The green area is their proposed park locations at this time. You can see here, this is kind of the bulk and placement of the mix. It looks at some minimum requirements and height requirements. You see here, duplexes, twin homes, and other single family. The height is 35 feet. That's similar to our other districts in Post Falls. And then the multifamily and other structures are 45 feet, which is typical to our commercial and multifamily standards. So looking at the commercial multifamily area, if you're looking at what could be permitted for commercial, this is the list of potential type development that would be allowed in that for our land use table. You can see all of these are more associated to neighborhood commercial size type commercialism versus your like big box. You can see specifically like a grocery store less than 17,500. And in that development agreement, we have Article 5. It's the section of the development agreement that regulates the requirements for specific types of uses. So you can see 5.2, that's looking at duplex design standards. You can, in their plan, they're not necessarily proposing duplexes at this time, but it's baked into this as boilerplate. So in case down the road there's ever an ask for that we would refer to this. Staff's proposing removing the 5.24 that was dealing with some driveway approaches. Reason for this is we now have approach standard widths in Title 12 that did not exist at the draft of this development agreement. And so by removing 5.24, we would just use Title 12 now and the driveway approach standards within it. We also have some other design standards for twin homes, detached garages, and also for addressing structures. We also have a condition in here where no more than 65% of the massing of the front of any residence would be a garage. Point is here is you'd want to encourage entryways going back to the previous entrance requirements coupled with that 65%. The goal would be to attain housing where you can clearly see the front entrance and you wouldn't have the massing of as much garage as you may see on the left versus on the right. There's some open space requirements. Going back to this right here is the proposed plan. They may propose alternatives of that location throughout the development. So far through my time here looking at PUDs and development, plans always evolve through time. So what this condition does allows some guarantee that the project, maybe not guarantee might be the wrong word, but some assurances that the balance of open space would stay in balance in the scheduling of development. You wouldn't end up with 85% of a project developed and no open space. So looking at keeping a balance there. Some general parcel information. Currently, this is ag land in the county. There's no known topology or vegetation matters that would hinder development of the site. Water provider would be Ross Point Water District, and there was a will serve letter that you've seen in their application. Sewer being provided by the city of Post Falls. Now we're going on to that zone change criteria aspect of this and kind of formulates why the Planning and Zoning Commission may have made that recommendation. The first three here are kind of thematically similar, so I'll kind of go over these, then go into some of the details of that. So first you're looking at it, is it consistent with the future land use map? And then you look at goals and policy. Is a proposal consistent with the goals and policies in the comp plan? And then you're looking at street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future plans, community plans, and any other features, geographic or whatnot, that pertain to the sites. So just generally, here's where the project's located. Currently, to the direct west and south, you see the R1 zone. That is a PUD though, that's being developed by Foxtel, and there's mixed housing product on that. They do intend to modify, and they do have some plans to, who knows if it goes through, but they are planning to schedule some differences north of Hope Avenue. Looking at the future land use map, you can see here that in the blue it's transitional, and in the yellow that's that low density residential, medium density, with that red being business commercial, with the pure red being the commercial designation for future land use. The purpose of the blue is the timing and scheduling of when these areas may request annexations was very unknown, the scheduling of that. Therefore, the purpose is a little bit different than in some of our other land use designations, but what you're looking at is looking at the focus areas. You're saying, what does the focus area say that's adopted in the comp plan to provide some guidance on when we get a request for annexation or zoning could lend itself for being either approved or denied. So looking at the 41 North, I highlighted this location in red in proximity to the boundaries in brown of the 41 North area. Focus provisions for multifamily, commercial, and tech uses near higher classified roadways. So Prairie Avenue being an arterial, a principal arterial, would meet that element. Development should provide pedestrian connectivity to all multi-use paths, trails, including the Prairie Trail. So what I did here is I overlaid their proposed commercial and mix and multifamily area and in proximity to the Prairie Avenue, as well as looking at that green space, and then I highlighted the Prairie Trail. So thematically, it looks as if there is an attempt to meet that provision of that focus area. Going into some of the goals of our comp plan. Grow and sustain a balanced, resilient economy for Post Falls, providing community prosperity and fiscal health. Goal 3, maintain and improve Post Falls small town scale, charm, and aesthetic beauty. Keep Post Falls neighborhood safe, vital, and attractive. Looking at a quantity of land uses, supporting community needs, Goal 7. Maintain natural resources, including clean air, soils, river, and aquifers, Goal 8. And when fiscal health is Goal 12. Policies that are in the comp plan. Support land use patterns that do the following here. I'm not going to read them all off, but I can pause for a quick bit. Policy 2, apply or revise zoning designations with careful considerations, the factors including, some of which I already spoke to. Policy 3 is encourage development patterns that provide suitably scaled daily needs, services within walking distance in residential areas, allowing a measure of independence for those who cannot drive or choose not to drive. So going back into some of those commercial uses, neighborhood commercial uses that cited and in proximity to the residential uses to the south may meet this policy. Policy 7 is encouraging some off-corridor access with development and circulation with some mixing of uses. Once again, the proposal may meet that policy. So that's the first 3 criteria that went over that first slide. Now going on to the next 3 criteria. Commercial and high-density residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with higher road classifications. I already touched on this about Prairie Avenue. Also to note, Fennicus Road and Meyer Road are major collectors. 5th criteria, limited or neighborhood commercial and lower density residential zoning is typically assigned as they proceed further away from your high intense areas. So if you're looking at Prairie Avenue eventually being a 5-lane road, generally speaking, you'd have higher uses along that 5-lane road. Similarly, 41. And as you move away from that, that's where you see those lesser dense products transitioning to the south and southeast. 6th criteria deals with industrial, which is not applicable for this request. Here's the agencies that were routed for comment on this proposed annexation. PA 1 and 4, both were from Kootenai County Fire and Rescue. They basically have now requested a boilerplate response that says that they continue through development of sites being consistent more or less with their fire code and collaboration through site development or within subdivisions. PA2, Police Department neutral. Then we had Highway District. They had one at the time of Planning and Zoning Commission. They were wanting 50-foot minimum from center line of Prairie Avenue. If you look in the staff report with the right-of-way they'd have to give up as part of development, it would meet Highway District's concern, of which the follow-up at the time of City Council, they responded with they had no comment. PA6 is the DEQs, and they had their typical, they more or less have construction-related issues at that time. Yeah, that concludes the staff report on the proposal. Any questions
Questions
for
of John
me?
at this point? See none? Proponent wish to speak?
I believe so.
Proponent? Does the proponent, sorry, I should get close to the microphone. Does the proponent wish to speak?
Yes, I do.
And you've got a clock up here, so just keep your eye on the timer, please. Name and address for the record, please.
I did. How can I get to it there?
What do you have? Your own PowerPoint?
Yep,
Just X that.
it's on the, Good evening. We're pleased to bring this annexation before the city. My name is Roger Glessner with Ace Solutions, 609 Calgary Court here in Post Falls. We represent the owners of this property. The Hughes family has been on this property for decades. In fact, they're in the audience here tonight. And before my time finishes up, I'll have Mark come up, because I think he wants to give some testimony on this as well, and I think it's very important that he does. This property has served them well over the years as a farm, but the farming days are over. And so now, what do we do with the property? What is the next phase for this property and for this family? And so that's where this annexation comes in. See if I can figure this out here. There's a few things. The development agreement that the city put together, they did a lot of hard work on it, and we worked with them through it. It has been signed by the owners, and so they do agree with it. And if this annexation gets approved and the mayor signs it, then it'll become a binding document. And so that binds what we're saying tonight and what our vision is for this property. That binds them with the city to move forward. And so their idea for this property is to do a good development, do something that is good for the city, and provide things that will help out the city and the surrounding area. A few things that I'd like to point out. I'm not going to go through the full development agreement or the staff report, because I think it was very thorough and we do agree with it. But there are a few things that I would like to highlight. One of them being, this is the current city limits right here, going around the property here over to this side. So what you see there is we've got this corner in this area here that has not been annexed. That's the last portion for this area for the city to grow. It comes up against Pole Line or Prairie on the north and Meyer on the east. Beyond that is Kootenai County, and who knows what the future brings for that. But this will help close out that corner of the city property. With this annexation request, we also are requesting residential mixed zoning on it. And the reason for that is it gives a good diversity for the property. It's a large piece of property. It's 103 acres. And the owners don't want to just, slather homes all over it or apartments all over it. They want to try to create a community, a place where people will want to live, want to be. And so we think that this residential mixed zoning is perfect for this property. I'll probably come back to these pictures as I go through so I can help reference it. The development and annexation agreement, it contains policies and requirements written by the city staff. And again, the city staff did a lot of hard work on this, laying this out, and we had a chance to review it. The purpose of this agreement is to mitigate the impacts of annexation. And hopefully I can demonstrate to you tonight where we are mitigating a lot of the impacts by some of the things that this annexation can bring to the city of Post Falls and the surrounding area. And then, of course, this document has been signed by the owners and will become binding if this annexation gets approved and the mayor signs it. Some of the bullet point items that I want to go through without going through the total agreement. One of them is the right-of-way and easement dedications. On Prairie Avenue, this annexation will dedicate the other half-width right-of-way and easement, sidewalk and drainage easement along Prairie Avenue. As you probably know, KMPO has a plan to increase the width or rebuild Prairie Avenue. Right now, they would, if they came in there right now, they would have to purchase that right-of-way and easement from the Hughes family. With this annexation, this will be a dedication that will be given for that use. Fennicus Road is on the west side of the property. It is part of the development that was prior to this one, the Foxtail PUD that was done there. They have, in their agreement, they have provided half of the right-of-way. With this annexation, the Hughes annexation, they will provide the other half of that right-of-way to complete that. As it is now, if this annexation doesn't go forward, there's only going to be a half a road there. there's a lot of people that'll already be driving on that road. So this will provide the other half of the right-of-way and easements to provide a full road width. Then on the east side is Meyer Road, and the same thing there. There will be a dedication of right-of-way and easements along there as well. Killdeer Avenue is in the south, and here's where I'll back up for a moment. Killdeer Avenue is already planned by the development to the west, and it will come in and tie into Fennicus. Fennicus is the road that goes north and south on the west side of this property. This annexation will provide the right-of-way to extend Killdeer through to Meyer Road, which completes Killdeer Road. Right now, it's going to be not a dead-end road, but it isn't going to be a complete road. So the circulation could be a problem. This annexation will bring that all the way through and complete that. Along with that, this is Fennicus, and so that half of the right-of-way has been dedicated with the subdivision to the west, and with this annexation, we'll provide the rest. And then, of course, here's Prairie Avenue, where there'll be a dedication of right-of-way in easement, and also on Meyer Road here on the east. Another aspect of this RM zoning is the open space requirement. It's 7% of the property, overall property. That's a little over 7 acres. I think talking with Mark, talking with the family, the vision that they have, they could possibly even exceed that. They're not looking for maximum density on this. They're looking for a quality development, a place where people do want to be and hang out. They'll provide grassy areas to gather, private park and recreation areas, and these will be private. They won't be city-owned, so the city won't be burdened by the maintenance or the care of these parks. They'll be taken care of by the homeowners association. Multi-use paths and sidewalks will wind through the property. They'll tie to the planned development to the west, and they'll travel all the way through the development and end up over on the east side, and will tie in with the Prairie Trail system. And these will connect the open spaces to the parks and the trails. And so there'll be good, we're looking for good pedestrian flow throughout this development. So I'm going to back up for just a second here. And I think everybody is aware of where the future Prairie Trail system is. And it's the old railroad grade up here. And the map that the city had up just a few minutes ago, and it showed some green area adjacent to that, some park and open area there. And that's where the trails will interconnect throughout this annexation and will join in with the future Prairie Trail system. Public water provisions. Currently, the Hughes Farm has a large irrigation well on the property. At annexation, the Ross Point water system will gain the use of this well. This is a 14 or 16-inch diameter irrigation well. It's a high-producing well. It has the ability to be. And this will be a great asset for the Ross Point water system. And again, this is an annexation that is not burdening or trying not to burden the systems that are already out there. We're providing easements, we're providing right-of-ways, we're providing water, we're providing a lot of things that'll help not only this annexation, but the property around it. At the time of annexation, of course, there'll be a transfer of water rights to the Ross Point water system. And then of course, the water main line extensions through the project will help create or complete the looping of the main lines in the system, the Ross Point water system that's already there. Right now, with the developments around there, we have dead end lines that are pointing that way, and this will complete that system. Sewer collections, pretty much the same thing. It'll be mainline extensions from the Foxtail subdivision. Again, completing systems that are already heading that way or already part of the planning. They'll be provide connection through to Meyer Road for future connection. The project will also be limited on sewer flows. So as the project develops and as the downstream sewer system, the flows start to increase in there, there is a section in the development agreement that states that once those downstream flows reach a certain demand, then the subdivision will have to stop until the problem is remedied. And so, again, not inundating the system that's around there, but working with the city. And so, as this development moves forward, once those downstream lines get to a certain capacity, things will stop. The development will have to stop, and there will have to be a solution worked out with the city to increase the flows or whatever it takes to do that. Along with that, there are surcharge fees that will be applied to this annexation to help offset the cost of those downstream improvements. That concludes my presentation on the Hughes subdivision. I think what we're trying to demonstrate here is that this is not an all burden subdivision. There are a lot of things around this annexation that are already put in place. This annexation can complete those instead of leaving them half done. This annexation can provide water, much needed water for the Ross Point water system at no cost, and trail systems, open space, all kinds of good things like that. Along with that, the RM zoning provides a good diversity throughout the property for some commercial development, residential development, all the way from higher density down to the lowest density. So we believe that it gives a good diversity. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions at this point? Lynn?
Intersection of Prairie and Fennicus. Is there going to be any kind of signaling there, traffic control there? What's planned for that intersection?
Yeah, and that might be a question for the city, not for me. And it could be part of the KMPO planning as well. I'm not sure.
Okay.
On that. Okay, yeah, I would like to introduce Mark Hughes, and he would like to say a few things.
Mr. Hughes, keep your eye on the clock, and if you run out of time, you can
I
come
see
back.
that.
He's a long-winded guy. You can come back up during the rebuttal period if you need more time.
Thank you much.
You bet. Name and address for the record.
Mark Hughes, I represent the Hughes family regarding the farm. And I wanted to take a couple of minutes because what's Post Falls get? What does Post Falls get? Well, John, Roger both really addressed a lot of the nuts and bolts of what accrues to the city, but what's going on to the property? And that's what I want to talk about. Because we have a vision. We have seen this day coming for 20 years as far as the development here. So we've had a lot of time to reflect on what do we want to create? What do we want to create? Well, we all want to live there. We're not interested in paving the land with vinyl covered boxes, human warehousing. No. We're very committed to creating a community, a mix of housing for families with kids, smaller footprint homes for the retired folks, for young folks starting out. You heard about the open spaces. There's actually a lot more. Happy to show you on my plans here. There's going to be a fountain. That green space that runs north and south, there's going to be a large fountain that shoots up 25 feet in the air. Talk about an amenity, wow. At the south end is going to be a piece of sculpture. That particular green space we think of as a centerpiece, the kind of place where the community potlucks are, where all of the festivities happen. But there's green spaces spread throughout the property because we want green spaces where kids can go out and play, kick soccer balls around, have a soccer game, football game. The reason for the commercial, we want to offer amenities for people so they don't have to get in their car and drive into town to drop the kids off at a daycare, to go to a beauty salon, to go to a gym, a coffee shop, a restaurant. Our plan includes restaurants, commercial spaces, office spaces, a brew pub, hello, I think you can all vote for that. Okay, I got 13 seconds. I'm about done. Every time I show somebody these plans, they all say the same thing. Wow, nobody's doing anything like this. This is going to be great. It is. It's going to be a gem. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Rhiannon. Thank you.
Do we want Rob to address that Fennicus question now?
Oh, okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, in regards to the intersection of Fennicus and Prairie Avenue, the city of Post Falls, along with Post Falls Highway District, a couple of years ago got a grant to widen Prairie Avenue between Highway 41 and Meyer Road. Currently, Post Falls Highway District is getting engineers to provide their qualifications to start that design. Right now, the plan is, or the state has it identified for 2028 for construction for widening. With Post Falls Highway District, the city of Post Falls is talking with the state to get included at the Fennicus and Prairie Avenue, the design for a roundabout at that location. There's not a guarantee that that will be added to that project at this time. However, the city does have a roundabout identified in its transportation master plan and is collecting impact fees towards the construction of that roundabout at present. Does that answer your questions?
It does.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Quick question about, about the green space?
For who?
Question.
For who?
Well, I'm not exactly sure who to ask this
Go ahead
question
and ask
to.
it, we'll figure it out.
So with the green space and parks being privately owned, are there plans, and this is just in reference to things that we faced before in the city, are there plans for any play structures or anything like that, you know, with it being outside of the city purview?
So
I just
if
want to
it's-
guarantee that.
If it's a
quality.
private park, it's up for them to develop their private amenities for their own private space. When it becomes a public park and they're providing land that gets transferred to the city of Post Falls for operation and maintenance, then they coordinate with Dave Fair, the parks director, and coming up with a plan, and that's where there's more guidance and control between the city and the developer. So in this case, all the amenities will be scheduled in by the private party.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Wishing to testify conditionally in favor, Mike Bennies. And Mike, when you come up,
Start after I compliment people, and number two, I'll talk to this up here, so that's good. Okay, I want to thank all the people at the public zoning. I mean, I got calls back and so forth from a number of them. They're all very professional, very nice. The other compliments to Mark. I had a good conversation with him after I found out about the annexation. I didn't get the original invite, so anyways, otherwise I would have been here earlier, so
perfect.
go ahead.
Name for the record, and if you
Mike.
can,
Oh,
get a little
sure.
closer to the microphone.
Yeah, Mike Benier. I live at 3560 North Meyer Road, so I'm right across the street. If you look at the map there above my head, if you look at where Killdeer comes across, my house sits right there, right in the headlight zone coming across. So that's why I'm here, of course. So what I'd like to do, and I think Mark's committed to addressing this somehow, some way, I'd like to have actually either, you know, Killdeer not come out onto Meyer, you know, do a roundabout there and point people up. But if it needs to come across, I would appreciate it if it would be straight in alignment with the rest of Killdeer, so that it would come straight across. In that case, it would exit between my house and my neighbor to the north's house, not having headlights coming at us during the middle of the night. So that's really kind of the condition request here that I have. And if for some reason that can't be done, you know, I'd like to work with Mark to figure out how to minimize the light pollution and other safety concerns that I have with cars coming straight at that intersection into my house. So that's really about the sum of it.
Good.
Okay?
Thank you, Mr.
All
Benier.
right, sure.
And I apologize for mispronouncing your name.
That's all right. Happens once or twice.
One thing is, I'm consistent on the names. There are no people wishing to testify neutral. Wishing to testify in opposition, Tammy Bremer.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Tammy Bramer. My address is, do you need my full address?
Post
Okay,
Falls.
I live in Post Falls. So I can definitely empathize with the plight of the Hughes family. I am a farm girl, and I've driven through the Prairie and said to myself, if our family farm was here, what would we do? We'd probably sell and pack up and move to Timbuktu and start another farm. So I can empathize with you on that, but my concern with this entire annexation is, well, first of all, goal number 3 was that was put up here is this was supposed to be measured against goal number 3, which is to maintain and improve Post Falls small town scale charm and aesthetic beauty. Well, we haven't been doing that for the last year. I don't know if we're going to start doing that, but we've seen all of these developments come up, and green space is talked about, but it's not implemented. I unfortunately live in an apartment. I'm a farm girl. I'm stuck in an apartment because there's nothing else to rent. So while this concept sounds good, the green space on that picture is less than 10% of 103 acres. And if the vision is to provide families with a place to gather, then why the RM zoning? Why aren't we zoning R1 for housing and setting a portion of that property aside for RM? So it's kind of an oxymoron to say we want this whole vision of families playing together and having barbecues and a community together on 103 acres. At the same time, we're going to throw in some industrial, possibly a school, a brew pub, a supermarket, a beauty shop, and we're all going to live there. I understand possibly your heart and your intention behind that, but I don't think that's the reality. And what is to stop this from being subdivided in the future? So if this property is annexed into the city, 103 acres is annexed in the city of Post Falls, what stops that from being further subdivided 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, and all of a sudden we have 103 acres of more apartment buildings? And if any of you want to know what it's like to live in a high-density apartment, I'll house swap you. You can come live with me. I'll trade for a night. You can live in my house, and we'll see how much of a community it really is. Because even duplexes and apartments, it's not that lovey-dovey community feel. It just isn't. So I totally understand why the Hughes family wants to do this, but I think it's a slippery slope, and I think the city really needs to take a hard look at when is enough enough? When do we stop annexing land? When do we use the land we already have? Because we have plenty of land that still isn't developed within the city. And if we're going to annex more land, I think we need to be very careful with the zoning requirements that we put on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for your information, if it's zoned
Yeah.
and things are allowed, if they want to go past that, they have to go through the process again.
Well, I know that, but
So,
there's
just to let you know.
Yeah, I know, but this RM, there's already over 10% of it can be high density.
Yeah. That's what,
So
that
that's a
would, so if they
problem.
wanted to go more, they would have to come back. So
Yeah, but-
just for information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Wishing to speak in opposition, Bob Flowers.
Bob Flowers. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Well, let me make one thing real clear so Mr. Wilson doesn't get after me. There is no rule that says you have to annex this property into the city. None whatsoever. No requirements, no nothing. Because it is not city land at this point. It is still county land. And this RM, residential mixed code that they're asking for. You know, there was a very smart saying made by the council through the years that I've heard him say it many times. They never wanted to tie the hands of a future council. They never wanted to pass something that would tie a future council's hands in changing something. Well, I'd ask you right now to change that RM zoning. Get rid of it. High-density commercial housing. We've had so much of this, so much. Apartments, everywhere you look around this town in the last few years, we've seen nothing but apartments going up. Look at this ugliness just a few blocks from the city hall. You want a good example of apartments. Or the folks down there, now, I'm saying, one, if for some reason you think you have to bring in more land into the city, even though the city has plenty of developable land at this point, at least look at that zoning. Do not give them an RM zoning, because that's way too much drop right there on Prairie. You're going to end up with a bunch of ugly apartments, or you're going to end up with commercial with apartments above, and they'll get to the commercial filling it in sooner or later. But I don't think at this point the city needs to take on any more land than what they already have. They can't handle what they got. They keep having to subcontract it out to other folks to maintain different things. Just let us deal with what we have now, because we don't need any more at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Wishing to speak in opposition, Howard Burns. And Mr. Burns, just so you know, we did get the voluminous information you provided. We all got it, and we all looked at it. So just to let you know.
Thank you.
Howard Burns, Post Falls. In addition to what I provided you when I could sit down and write it out so I don't have to think on my feet, and having listened here today, and once I will also speak, I understand where Mr. Hughes is coming from, and having it be a farm, it's tough today. Because I'll price the gas. I don't know how you afford gas for the tractor on a farm today. But these points, first off, the comment was made, don't want to slather homes all over it. Well, then just wait, do a plan, show your lot sizes, show the sizes of your townhomes, show us elevations for the townhomes, show us what the apartments are going to look like, and then come back and ask to be annexed in. And here's my real project. No little clouds, no dreams, concrete. This is what I want to build. I'm saying, here's what the apartment elevations are going to be. Here's how many they're going to be. Here's what the commercial is going to be, et cetera, et cetera. The one half of, we talked about the streets being come in. Well, one half of Prairie is nice to get, quote unquote, free. But we're not really getting it free. We're getting it for at least double the density that would be okay on R1. And if it stayed in the county, there could be, 20 homes? There's one house per 5 acre would be the county zoning. So half of Prairie widened, nice, but it doesn't do much. Now, if Prairie's going to be widened all the way down, different issue on money. Then it was commented on by Mr. Manley that Foxtail seems to be having, again, some discussion about their north portion where they tried to do a zone change and turn it into all high-density apartments. You folks turned it down, which I greatly appreciated. And if I lived in Foxtail, I'd be so thankful. Foxtail was approved master plan. Parkland already changed the whole plan, but Foxtail should stay the way it is. Everything's laid out. You can see what you're getting when you move there, and that's what this should be. A nice master plan, show what it's going to look like. And it's at the edge of the city. Contemplate as a city, we need to know so we turn off Highway 41 and we're driving Prairie Avenue east. What are we going to see as we drive Prairie Avenue east over the years? This is the last bit of the city, and then we're going to go into Big Sky. This is on the south side. That's all 5 acre lots. It's not going to change, I don't think. But what is it going to look like? Is it going to be 3- and 4-story apartments all the way down Prairie? It's one thing for Highway 41 to be that. I think Prairie going east should be something far less dense and far prettier. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. And the last person, wishing to testify, and I'm going to have you pronounce your name because I'm going to butcher it. Seth?
Yeah, Seth Pomeranian.
Seth Pomeranian. Thank you. And as he said, he is Seth Pomeraney, and lives in Post Falls.
Yeah.
You're good.
Mayor, council, Mark, you could speak for the Hughes family, but I will speak for Randy, Erica, Aubrey, Nick, and the countless other people who made the Hughes farm their family while Fran was still living. I'm here. I just got off work. I got told I don't really have any notes prepared for this or anything, but it just it's just very upsetting to hear that this is what's moving forward. So I wish I would have prepared something better. But I am here on behalf of Fran and not Mark, because this is exactly what Fran would oppose. Fran would not stand for this. You can look through all of the ground that Fran farmed prior to, not just the Hughes farm itself, but all the other farmland that is now houses, right? Once when you plant a house, you don't plant crops anymore. It's gone. Looked at the Tullamore ground. You know, we used to grow triticale out there, the alfalfa. You know, when the wind would blow, it was like you were looking out in the ocean. And now it's just homes. It's very upsetting that that there's not an opportunity for something else to be done with this property in memory of Fran. When I started working for Fran, it was right before the housing market crashed. Terry Nichols had the land right behind it where Foxtail is now, right? And Terry Nichols fell for the briefcase of money, right? The developer showed up with a briefcase of money and said, here's your down payment. We're going to buy the rest of your land once when we can get it approved. Well, the housing market tanked. Terry Nichols lost, or excuse me, not Terry Nichols, Terry Jacklin lost all of that ground at Foxtail. The developers got to buy it right back from the bank at dirt cheap ground, and you know who got screwed on that was Terry Jacklin, right? And so Fran was given the opportunity with that briefcase of money. And I was standing there when Fran told the guy, get off of my property, get out of here. And the developer said, it's yours, just take it, just take it. And Fran said, I don't want. And the developer asked, will you just at least look at it? And Fran said, no, it's not for sale. This is farm ground. This is what Fran would stand for. He would stand for Fran, 20 years soil conservation district. He made sure that the land that he farmed, that he did, was at was primo, right? Like that's what he stood for, was to be the steward of the land, right? When you're a farmer, you're not just looking for the money, because God knows, Mark, right? Fran didn't make a lot of money. But what Fran did is he made friends. He impacted high school kids year after year after year on that ground. You know, I get frustrated when there's not a lot of thought out of it, out of this process, right? Because we can look at what we're doing right now that you council members, you, Mr. Mayor, are fully responsible for, right? Look at all of that farm ground and look at what you see now. And if you guys keep on are okay with this, then, you know, but remember, like, this is the ground. This is where, you know, this is what Post Falls was founded on. And I just really wish you guys would reconsider.
Thank you. No. Applicant, wish to rebut.
I like carrying my plans around. First, Nathan, is it?
Yes.
You had brought up the question about the park.
Yep.
Which incidentally is going to be dedicated to our brother Fran, who did farm this land his entire life. It's going to be called Farm Boy Park. There's going to be a giant granite monument with his picture on it. It's going to be maintained by the HOA. Our intention is that park is an amenity, of course, for the residents. but also an amenity for the public, in particular the people using the trail. So they'll be able to pull off there. There will be parking, but people can pull off the trail, fill up a water bottle, because there'll be a water fountain. There will be a shelter. There will be barbecue, the barbecue pits, and there will be some playground equipment on there. I want to address some of the opponents who I think are maybe perhaps mistaken about density. As you know, with the RM zoning, our hands are tied. We have an agreement with the city as far as the amount of multifamily we can put in, the amount of commercial we can put in. I want to mention one more thing. I hope you can appreciate we're not the big city developer, right? We're not coming in here with the briefcase of cash to buy a piece of land that we have to have debt service on. We own this land. We've owned it for almost half a century. That gives us a lot of options, doesn't it? We don't have to squeeze every nickel out of this project. We already own the land. So what you're looking at on that screen up there and the amount of open space is actually a fraction of the open space that's actually contained in there. I could show you my plan, which is what is going to be built out there. We don't get into details, of course, in an annexation hearing. A bubble map is what we provide. When we get into the subdivision hearing, there will be a lot of questions about some of the details. But we are absolutely committed to creating a vibrant, livable community for families, lots of open space. There's going to be a lot more, again, than what you're seeing up there. And we're all going to live there. So we're committed to creating a gem. Again, I mentioned fountains. Let's talk about fountains for a second. We're water people, okay? We grew up in Lake Erie. There's going to be a great big fountain. I had talked about that already. There's going to be some water features on the main entrances off of Prairie and off of Fennicus, similar to what we have right over here, the little things that Post Falls has. There's also going to be a fountain in the open space at the very southwest corner, sort of a giant bird bath, actually, with a reflecting type of pool. And then there's going to be smaller water features scattered throughout. You know, I didn't really get a chance to talk about this. This development is going to have community gardens. There's going to be little water features in there. These community gardens are really going to be great. Little oases with raised bed gardens available to residents, picnic tables, benches, places for people to gather. And I want to take a minute and talk about details. As I mentioned, we've seen this coming forever. And as a matter of fact, you know what? Yes, our brother Fran, who passed away September 20, 2017, oh my gosh, that guy had farming in his blood. This would be a farm forever had he lived, because there's no way we would have touched it if Fran wanted to farm it, but he's gone. But Fran wasn't stupid. He saw the future as well as all the rest of us, okay? John, he's been in to talk to you, hasn't he? Fran knew what was coming. He wasn't stupid. He was a realist. He was a farmer, but he was a realist. Let me talk about some details, because you know what? How do you create a vibrant, livable community? Got to pay attention to details. And we've looked at this. The lighting, the fences we're going to use, the pathways, the sidewalks that are along the rights of way, et cetera, the traditional concrete sidewalks, like we're all used to seeing, but the pathways that go throughout this property, pavers. Why pavers? Well, one, they're nice, they look good. They're conducive to walking. But not so much for the little kid on the skateboard who's flying along at breakneck speed and knocks down the old lady. Oops, sorry. And I wanted to mention that. I just wanted to mention, we've been thinking about this for a long time. We're committed to creating a gem, a truly viable, livable community, something that everybody in Post Falls will say, wow, have you been out to the farm? Have you seen the fountain? Have you been out there at that restaurant? I didn't get a chance to address this earlier, so I'll take a minute. As I mentioned, the purpose for the retail is we want to provide amenities to the people who live there. They don't have to get in their car and drive into town. So the coffee shop, the brew pub, the beauty salon, the gym, the daycare, the restaurants, et cetera. And then we're going to have some commercial office space so that there's the ability to have the dentist, the financial planner, the chiropractor, et cetera. So some of these services that just make it nice for living there. I'm convinced that when this project is built out and people are going in there, they're going to go, I want to live here. I want to live here. This is different. This is a great place. Hope I've addressed some of the questions brought up by the...
Any questions at this point? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I'll close the public hearing. Who'd like to start?
I'll go. This is one of those, like so many of them are, tough ones, although it's pretty easy to be consistent on where I've been the last couple of years. One, the project looks great, and it does a lot of things that a lot of annexations wouldn't do in terms of allowing for expansion of existing roadways, which coincide with planned development along Prairie, Meyer, etc. Completing roadways, Killdeer, the north-south, Fennicus, etc. Completing the sewer system, completing the water system. I mean, a lot of that is really built into this development and is a huge consideration for us when we consider annexations into the city. This checks a lot of the boxes. Having a local developer, a family that's been here for many, many years is, in my opinion, advantageous because they understand the history of the area, the feel of the area, etc. And we typically get a better product out of that. That said, I get back to my curmudgeon-y side that I've been expressing the last couple of years, and that we've got a Highway 41 project that's behind schedule and a mess, and Highway 41's been a mess for quite some time. And there's a lot of projects near the Highway 41 corridor that are not yet built out that would continue to feed onto it. Meyer Road is pretty undeveloped. Again, feeds down into town, all the way down by Dysfunction Junction, which is starting a 4-year project this summer. And that's already, I live right by that intersection, and it's a disaster. Adding more traffic to that, I've seen more near-miss accidents on that road, on that intersection, than just about anywhere else in town. Prairie is not slated for expansion until 2028, 6 years from now. Pressure on Prairie once Foxtail continues to build out, other developments on 41 continue to build out, is going to be under more and more pressure until that can get widened 8 years from now to start. I'm assuming that's probably a year or two project also. So what I've said to just about any high density development that is on or feeds into the Highway 41 corridor is, and this one is a tougher one because I really like it. I just wonder if it's too soon. I think we need the infrastructure projects that are already in place, already in progress or soon to be in progress, to finish out or be progressing before I feel comfortable approving more high density in that area. And I've been very consistent about this the last 2-3 years. Another comment I will make, though, is there obviously is a need for housing. And we had she came up and said she's trapped in an apartment because there's nothing else to rent. Well, the reason there's nothing else to rent is because more people want to live here than there are houses for them. So there's a need for it. I'm just concerned about the effect on the infrastructure in the near term. So I think it's the right project. I'm just not sure it's the right time.
Thank you. Mr. Walker.
I have to agree with a lot of what you said there. Those were my concerns too, is knowing Prairie's not moving until 2028, and it's right on Highway 41, close to. I just feel that timing probably isn't the right best with adding more traffic and flow through there. It's just, I don't know, it's a tough one for me.
Thornton.
It could almost be considered infill in some alternate universe, because it is surrounded by the city. And I love that the family is a developer, but there's just no way around exactly what has been mentioned here, and that we have, that has been part of the decision-making process, is the Highway 41, and in this case Prairie. But I think it's a great project, even though I haven't seen the plans. Haven't seen all the plans. I think it's a great project. Sometimes it's just timing, and this would be one of those times for me.
Thank you. Mr. Shove.
I have a couple different thoughts. First one I want to mention to Seth is I totally understand the emotional side. My family's been here since 1910. There's a logging camp in Twin Lakes. I'd love to still have that, but the reality is they sold it. And as much as we'd love to continue to hang on to those things, times change. Sometimes it's time to move on. And so I guess that's my perspective on that, is private property. The owner has the prerogative to say what they want to do with that. And so that's where I stand on that. I do have a concern with the plan not being laid out well. There's a lot of talk about this is what we want to do, and I love the plans. I think they'll be great, but we don't really see the plan. And so that's my hesitancy there, is I'd like to see more of what the plan is before we approve it. I think that's, again, with the roads there, that would be a concern, but I'd like to see more of a plan be brought before we approve that.
Thank you. Mr. Borders.
I like the development itself. I like the zoning. I think everything is fine there. My big concern is the property to the west, the Foxdale property, is still in question. There's no timeline on when anything is going to happen with that. The timing with Prairie Avenue is a problem for me. I'd like to see that moving a lot faster than 2028 if we can make that happen. That's a big concern for me. There was a mention of some access out onto Prairie Avenue other than Fennicus and Meyer, and I don't think that's anything that can be done with the current traffic situation. So until we get 41 done, we get some more action on the property to the west. I like the project. I liked everything about it except for the timing and accesses. So,
thank you, Mr. Ziegler.
I think the only thing I would add, I agree with pretty much the rest of the council. I like the idea of it. I don't like the zoning. To me, it doesn't fit, the transitional designation that we kind of had for that area with county to the east and to the north existing. So that's my take on it.
Well, I'm not going to get to vote on this, but my thoughts are, I think the project's good. I will echo what Mr. Malloy said as far as having the Hughes family being the developer. I didn't think I liked the RM zoning. So I'm not sure if I agree with you or disagree with you, but that's something that I would have to think of. I think there is some merit to some RM zoning, because you know what the maximums are at that point, and anything else would have to come back through the process to be changed. My big issue is, as everybody said, is timing, and that's where I would be on this.
Can I make one more comment, too?
Absolutely.
I'd just like to address Mr. Burns' comment about we'd like to see the exact plot, property lines, elevations, et cetera. The issue with that is that then the prospective developer would have to spend hundreds of thousands, if not more, in survey costs, or design costs, everything else, to then maybe have the opportunity for us to say no. And I think that's a pretty heavy burden, an unfair burden to put on a developer before we approve or disapprove. So that's generally why we see bubble maps at this phase, because they're still not even sure if they can make any plan come to fruition or not, so.
And a lot of that can be dealt with at subdivision hearings.
Correct.
So,
And that's when it will be.
yep. I'd entertain a motion.
I would move to deny the Hughes Farm annexation.
Second?
Motion, who second? Second. Thank you. Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item on, under public hearings is the Stockwell annexation. Laura, I thought I'll open the public hearing.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council President Thorson, and council members. Laura Jones, Associate Planner with the City of Post Falls, introducing the Stockwell annexation, file number ANNX 0011-2021. The property owner is Dave and Debbie Stockwell, and the applicant is Chuck Hughes. The requested action tonight is for review and approval of the annexation of approximately 5 acres into the City of Post Falls, with the zoning designation of single-family residential R1. The site is located south of Prairie between North Chase Road and North Howell Road, as indicated in red on the vicinity map. You can see it's surrounded by city on 3 sides with county to the north. Looking at the current land use, it's built out with a single-family home, the Stockwell residence currently. Physical characteristics or natural features, it is located, like most of the land within the city, over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. The water provider is East Green Acres Irrigation District, and the City of Post Falls will provide wastewater services. Looking at the surrounding zoning, like I said, to the north is Kootenai County, unincorporated, and it's typically 5-acre land, single-family residence. To the east is Tranquil Meadows, which is an R1 subdivision. And then to the south and to the west, we have R1S zoning, but both of those subdivisions have PUDs that allow for smaller lot sizes. R1S, as you know, typically has a 1-acre lot size. The lots within Craftsman at Meadow Ridge are more about 1/4 acre, as are the lots in Arrowleaf, and they have the bulk and placement standards of the R1 zone. Looking at the first review criteria for a zone change is that amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the future land use map. As with the Hughes annexation, this is also in the transitional zone, and it looks at the underlying focus area for compliance with the comprehensive plan. The underlying focus area is the Central Prairie, and the comp plan calls for future growth should embrace a variety of housing types and land uses, maintain quality standards, and provide even greater emphasis on pedestrian friendliness and connecting neighborhoods to community trails and nearby amenities. It also calls to support provisions for a variety of housing types and densities. The second review criteria is that amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the goals and policies found within the comprehensive plan. Looking at the goals that may be applicable with this annexation request is Goal 5, to keep Post Falls neighborhoods safe, vital, and attractive, and Goal 7, which is to plan for and establish types and quantities of land uses in Post Falls, supporting community needs and the city's long-term sustainability. Going into the policies, Policy 1 may be applicable, which is to support land use patterns that do the following, and I'm not going to read through all of them. I'm going to cover them in future slides here. Policy 2, again, not going to read through them, but apply or revise zoning designations with careful consideration of the following factors. One of those factors was infrastructure and service plans, and the City of Post Falls Fisher Lift Station is approaching capacity, and reconstruction is anticipated for 2024. In order to mitigate that obstacle, the city will be providing additional capacity to the Fisher Station during the fall or winter of 2022 with temporary improvements. And that is just until the long-term improvements can be constructed. And the developer has agreed to share the cost and contribute $5,000 to that infrastructure improvement prior to plating. Yes.
What are the total costs?
Rob, do you know the total cost?
More complex than just a number.
Oh, come on. Keep it simple for me, Rob.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, the total cost to upgrade the lift station is less than $80,000. The reason I say less than $80,000 was if we had to go and buy all the equipment ourselves to make that upgrade, that was what the ballpark figure was. We have some spare parts or spare pumps and other equipment that's needed already in our reserves, and so that would be able to provide that temporary capacity to handle us until 2024. A lot of that additional capacity is really needed because of another project that if we award a bid for, we could see the, I want to say Guy Road, but it's the Grayling Estates lift station and Prairie Falls 2 lift stations go offline. And if those go offline this year, we need the additional capacity and need to be doing these improvements anyway. Out of a total improvement, these guys counted for about 5% of the additional capacity.
But what you're telling us is that some of these temporary capacity increases need to happen anyway.
Correct.
And a lot of the equipment that goes into it is stuff we already own.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Sorry about the curveball there.
Nope, that's fine. I anticipated Rob coming up on that one. Looking at domestic water, it's going to be served by East Green Acres Irrigation District, and the Irrigation District has provided a will-serve letter for both domestic and irrigation water. Continuing on with the goals and policies, additional policies that might be relevant are 8, 15, and 33, and I'm mostly going to focus on 33, which deals with transportation and road patterns and pedestrian ways. I will get into that in one moment, but the third review criteria is zoning that is assigned following consideration of such items as street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic or natural features. Again, I'm going to talk about street classification and traffic patterns in the next slide. And as mentioned before, but just a reminder, the geographic and natural features is the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. So looking at the street classification and traffic patterns, Prairie to the north is a principal arterial. Chase Road on the eastern portion in the green is a minor arterial, and Fisher Avenue to the bottom or the south is minor collector. And engineering staff has determined that there should not be a negative impact to the existing transportation system with this development. Further road connectivity and traffic patterns. The site here in the middle is the annexation parcel, the subject parcel for tonight. This blue line is where Greencrest Way will connect through, tying Arrowleaf and Tranquil Meadows subdivisions together and completing that road system. In the future, this eastern property has plans to come through, continuing Greencrest Way and connecting up to the north here to this street. So that goal number 30, or excuse me, policy number 33 was to connect roadway systems and traffic patterns, and this will help accomplish that policy. The next review criteria is that commercial and high-density residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with a higher road classification. As mentioned, Prairie Avenue is a principal arterial, and although it allows for higher density and commercial use, that zoning would not fit as well here as the R1 zoning does. The next review criteria is that limited or neighborhood commercial and lower density residential zoning is typically assigned for properties as they proceed further away from the higher intensity urban activity. As you can see on the map, the red or the darker, I don't know if it's red or darker pink, but that is where we currently have high intense urban activity. And then the lighter shade of pink is areas that are developing with high intensity. Our subject property is kind of on that northern section right here and away from those high intensity urban activity areas. The last review criteria is that industrial zoning is typically assigned for properties with sufficient access to major transportation routes and may be situated away from residential zoning. This criteria is not applicable. They are not asking for industrial zoning, and none of the land around the property is industrial. This is the list of agencies notified and given a chance to comment. Of those agencies, Post Falls Highway District was neutral. Post Falls Police Department was neutral. Post Falls Highway District just noted that access to Prairie Avenue is prohibited, which is in line with the Post Falls Master Transportation Plan. The Department of Environmental Quality had no comments, and then Kootenai County Fire and Rescue is going to reserve their comments for time of permitting process. And with that, I can take questions.
Any questions for Laura? Thank you. Does the proponent wish to speak?
Chuck, do you have a slideshow, or do you want me? Okay.
Name and address for the record, please.
Chuck Hughes, Coeur d'Alene. Mayor, council, this subdivision has everything ready for it. I mean, we got water and sewer stubbed out Narrow Crest Way from both sides. And it's an infill transitional piece. Basically, it's pretty simple. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
The existing house that's on that property, is it staying?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, we designed around that house, total of 18 lots, counting the house, with a density of 3.6, and we can go to 5.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone wishing to testify?
No.
With that, I'll close the public hearing. I'll start this one. When I looked at this and read it, I know there was some concern expressed at the planning and zoning meeting about road going through green space. And as was stated during that meeting, that green space was actually right-of-way that was designated as a future roadway. So it's not that if this is approved, they're giving up green space. It's that the road that had been identified, or the area for the road which had been identified, would in fact have the road on it. To me, it makes a lot of sense. It is infill. The density, I think, is very appropriate. I like the fact that there's no direct access out on Prairie.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my comment. Anybody else want to add? Jump in.
I like it. 5 out of 5 stars, wouldn't change a thing.
It's about as straightforward as you can come.
Yeah, my only concern was the opposition for the roadway, but that was answered, and you just answered as well, that it was already
identified.
It was already designed for that, so yeah, I don't have any concern.
I'd entertain a motion.
I'd move to approve the Stockwell Annexation, ANNX-0011-2021.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Borders.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Unfinished business returning ordinances and resolutions. Tonight, we have none. New business, we have 4. First would be the approval of the contract award for Spokane Street Rehabilitation. This always scares me, Volume 1 of 2 and Volume 2 of 2. That says it's going to be big.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. Robert Paulus, Assistant City Engineer. This is what Volume 1 of 2 and 2 of 2 look like combined.
I was right.
When this project was bid out, it was bid under the project name, the Spokane Street and Prairie Avenue Phase 2. Within it, the construction plans had Volume 1 of 2 and Volume 2 of 2. That came about because we were combining 2 separate projects, one that had started several years prior to, the most recent one. Back in February of this year, City Council authorized staff to go out to bid on the project. This project, if it is approved, will it will reconstruct Spokane Street from Poline Avenue up to Grange Avenue, which is about half a mile. And then it will modernize the entirety of Spokane Street from Poline Avenue up to Prairie to match its classification as a major collector roadway. The project will also decommission the, did it again, the Grayling Estates lift station and the Prairie Falls 2 lift station. It'll put in a deep sewer almost a half-mile long from Spokane Street almost to Chase Road. It will reconstruct Prairie Avenue between Chase and Spokane Street, and it will put in a multi-lane roundabout at the intersection of Spokane Street and Prairie to address capacity needs for the region, as well as local traffic and emergency services getting into the Crown Point subdivision. We advertised this project 2 times. We held a pre-bid meeting on February 14th, and we opened up bids on March the 4th. There were 2 bids received. Both our legal counsel and our consulting engineer have reviewed the documents that were received and found them to be generally in order. There was some inconsistencies in both bids. The low bidder was La Riviere, and they had a low bid of $5,309,369.20. Now, the inconsistency that existed in their project was they had a software problem. You were provided a copy of the letter, and they have put together and revised their numbers. It does not change the final dollar for the project, so that $5.309 million still holds. And if awarded, that dollar value may change a little bit depending upon the actual quantities that are built. Staff is recommending that we award the base bid and that we include a 10% contingency. The consulting engineer originally requested a 5% contingency. Staff, after having some discussion, again, a little bit with our legal counsel as well, there's some very dynamic things going on in the market right now, and there are some things which could occur beyond our control with some of the materials availability. So having that 10% contingency allows staff a little bit more flexibility to deal with those changes or unknown conditions. Yes, Councilor Malloy.
Question, would you have recommended a 10% contingency no matter who won the bid?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I stand for any questions that you may have on this project.
Sorry, I jumped the gun.
Any questions, Mr. Paulus? Thank you, Rod.
Actually, I do have a quick question. On the north side there of the roundabout, where it ties into Crown Point,
yes,
are all those streets basically ready to be tied into, kind of in
yes.
preparation for that?
Spokane Street is constructed to within just a couple hundred feet of the Prairie Avenue intersection right now. When the subdivision went in, the original plan was to bring Spokane Street into Prairie. However, there were some right-of-way issues that occurred with the neighboring property almost 10 years ago. And so we ended up only constructing an emergency access only, and that has not worked very well. Our barricades keep blowing over in the wind, people keep moving them out of the way. But on another front, the improvements are there, and the emergency access is really needed. The amount of people who live in there to only have one access point is not something that emergency services really desires to have.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. Entertain a motion.
I'd move to approve the contract to La Riviere for the Spokane Street Rehabilitation, Prairie Avenue and Spokane Street.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Thorson,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next up is the approval to bid the Poline Avenue Cecil Road Roundabout project. Oh, look who it is.
Yes, I don't think I've ever had 3 staff reports to give you in one evening, and that's in 20 years, so that's a new first for me. Poline and Cecil Roundabout. Back in July of 2021, the city entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Post Falls Urban Renewal Agency to develop 2 different projects. One of them was the Poline and Cecil Roundabout. Located at the intersection of Poline and Cecil Road, we have Post Falls High School in the southwest corner. The Tullamore Sports Complex, which is going to be a future project and is under development, is 1 mile to the north. About a half mile to the northeast, we have the Tullamore Park. There is an elementary school half a mile to the west, and then we got the Genesis Prep Academy and sports fields a quarter mile to the southeast. This project would look at installing a multi-lane roundabout at the intersection of Cecil Road and Poline Avenue. When we started the project, we had a traffic analysis done to look at what was the best solution for the area, trying to address concerns for students getting to school, both by motor vehicle, bicycle, and walking. We had some discussions with the Federal Highway Administration on their geometric safety, and we looked at the traffic volumes and looked closely which was going to work better, a traffic signal or a roundabout. As things have developed, we've also found that within the time constraints that we have to build this project, a traffic signal won't work because as of right now, you can expect traffic signal equipment from the time you award a project to be anywhere from 9 months to a year or possibly more. And this project, if we go out to bid and award it, would have to be done prior to school starting prior to the start of the fall semester this year. So this project will also include frontage improvements and road widening along Poline Avenue between Cecil Road and the Vineyard subdivision, a quarter mile to the west. It will also put in a turn restriction prohibiting left turns from the Post Falls High School student parking lot onto Poline Avenue. This was at the request of the Post Falls School District, and it was something that we found out in our public open house meeting and worked with them to include. In terms of safety, over the past 5 years, or looking at the 2016 to 2020 time period, there were 14 collisions in this location, 36% of them resulting in injuries. A majority of the collisions were due to failure to yield or stop or following too close. In a lot of those instances, inattentive driving was a secondary cause that was also related to that. It was a little bit surprising because one of the public comments we received a lot of, and we've noticed as well, is in the southeast corner there is the restricted visibility due to a fence. But that only came up as a contributing cause or primary cause in about 5% of the collisions. The area is currently marked as a school zone with 20 miles per hour when flashing. We programmed those lights to operate during the hours when it is most likely needed, when people are coming to and from the school. And the city installed a rectangular rapid flashing beacon in 2020 at the intersection to improve safety crossings for students. Thankfully, to date, there have been no pedestrian-involved collisions at that location in the time period shown between 2016 and 2020. The project is going to require some acquisition of property. We have been in contact with all the property owners, and we have verbal agreements with them to acquire those rights-of-way and some easements that go along with that. Our plan is that if this project goes out to bid, when we bring the project back with a recommendation to award or reject, we would at the same time bring those right-of-way acquisitions for your signature and approval. One of the reasons for that is we have urban renewal dollars involved in this project. However, the urban renewal dollars cannot be utilized towards any right-of-way or easement acquisition. Post Falls Urban Renewal Agency is participating up to $1.3 million to this project. In February, we had a minor amendment to our MOU, which allowed some of the dollars from this project to be utilized with another project down on Mullin and Cecil Road, which I'll be presenting to you shortly. The remaining costs, there's a portion of this project which is outside of the urban renewal boundary that would be funded by transportation impact fees. And then there's a small amount of developer cash out dollars which were acquired from the Knapp subdivision that was built back in the 2005-2006 timeframe. Give you a quick overview, and I've mentioned most of those items for the history of where we've come with this project. There was a public open house back in December of 2021. We're requesting to go out for advertising of this project in this month. We would open bids in April. Recommend award or denial of the project in April, And then per discussions with the school district, we look at starting the construction as soon as school gets out in June, and then have substantial completion by August 24th prior to school starting, and also to make our reimbursement needs with the Post Falls Urban Renewal District. I stand for any questions you may have, and then I look for a recommendation to advertise the project.
Any questions for Rob? Entertain a motion.
Move to approve the bid to pull line Cecil Avenue Roundabout project.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Rhiannon, please take the roll.
Shove.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. And the last one for Rob is the approval to bid the Cecil Road Mullin Avenue median project.
One last time, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the Mullin Avenue and Cecil Road Access Safety Project. This is also a urban renewal funded project. The intersection in question is shown right here. It's amazing how just a few months ago we had snow and gas prices that were about $1 a gallon less. So Mullin Avenue between Cecil Road and Sugar Maple Trail, which is just to the west on this project and out of the limits. Our big area of concern is the intersection by the Burger King on the western side of Walmart. If we take a look at the collision history at this location, this area is regularly in the top 10 list for collisions in the city of Post Falls. So this is a good project in that it addresses a known and regular collision problem. At the drive access going into Walmart, there is on average 7.4 collisions per year. Previously, when I was talking with you about Pole Line Avenue and Cecil Road, that averages 2.8 collisions per year. So this is almost 4 times higher. At the intersection, the signalized intersection of Cecil Road and Mullin Avenue, we have about 4.8 collisions per year. I did point out that between 2018 and 2020, we were about 25% less than that. One of the main locations and main reasons for collisions in this area is that drive access going into Walmart. You have a high volume of traffic coming and making right turns into Walmart. You got traffic that stacks up, and you sometimes get fairly large queues as someone's waiting to make a left turn out onto Mullin Avenue. When that vehicle makes a left turn out, occasionally they do not see that vehicle coming from the side because it's obscured by the vehicles making a turn in, and then we get T-bone type collisions, which tend to result in higher amounts of damage and more likely to have injuries associated with that. Currently, along that section of the roadway, 4 of the 7 driveway approaches already have left turn restrictions in place. Our proposed modifications are to restrict the left turn access onto Mullin Avenue at 2 more driveway approaches, and to modify the driveway approach going on to Mullin Avenue at Walmart into a 3/4 turn movement. That means people can make rights in and rights out from the Walmart site, but they can only make left turns in. We would be getting rid of the left turn out at that location. How we would manage to do that, we would extend the existing concrete curb median out there to restrict turns into the directions that we want. We would need to modify the existing traffic island, and we would modify it so that the length of that turn pocket would be able to handle anticipated traffic volumes between now and 2030. The reason I mentioned that 2030, it's not that long distance out, but we anticipate that around the year 2030, hopefully a little bit longer than that, that Cecil Road and Mullin Avenue will probably need some additional modifications, which would involve moving the traffic signals and possibly adding additional turn lanes at that location. We could not include those type of improvements with this project, as it would quickly go well beyond what we had for available funding. With this project, we would modify the existing signal timing at that intersection based first upon what we were anticipating for the traffic patterns to change with putting these turn restrictions in. And then after those are in place for about a year, we would take a look at it again and tweak if needed to better address how the actual traffic patterns are. It's one thing to model how traffic's going to be, but the reality is people drive a little bit different than models when you get down into the microscopic look at it. This is just a picture of showing the driveway approach on the Walmart site on how we would configure the concrete islands, more for engineers than anyone else. And then this is showing the center medians and the inclusion of delineators within that concrete median in select locations where it will provide the most reinforcement to keep people from driving over the concrete or knowing where they need to be. That will also help our plow drivers during the winter time. Stand for any questions that you may
Questions,
have on
Rob,
this
on this one?
project.
Joe?
So I would anticipate a pretty large increase in U-turns in Mullin and Cecil. Is there any safety issues with tripling the number of people U-turning right there?
We're going to take a look and see what people are actually doing at that location. If we notice that people are starting to make U-turns, we will probably mark it as a no U-turn. That is a very tight turn, and based upon my own observations, I don't think that most vehicles can make a safe U-turn at that location. We've squeezed that road to get as much into it as possible with 5 lanes and 2 bicycle lanes. And 54 feet across, you lose more than half of it, and try to make a U-turn on 20-some feet is really difficult.
I can guarantee they'll try, but I wonder if, and this isn't going to change my vote at all, but if there's any thought of working with Walmart to have signage within their parking lot saying for Mullin East, please use Cecil exit out of the parking lot, so they can just turn right out of there. Otherwise, I foresee a lot of people going out of the north exit and trying to flip a U-turn at the light and making a mess. But
we are working with Walmart to get a temporary construction easement. Part of the project shows, you see where it says stop and puts an arrow. That's work that occurs actually on their driveway. It's something that we don't have to include with it, but it would be best to put in here. And as we continue to talk with Walmart, we'll see about those additional signs.
okay.
Thank you. Carrie, do you have a question?
Yeah, now I don't, but I did want to say you've really upped your PowerPoint game. Those were some very good graphics on there.
Oh, thank you.
Good
Yeah,
job.
moving pictures and everything.
I know.
It's awesome.
Are there any questions of Rob? If not, entertain a motion.
I'd move to approve to bid the Cecil Road and Mullin Avenue median project.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you. And the last item under new business tonight is parking code update. Bill?
Load the PowerPoint, excuse me.
I know.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to present the parking ordinance that we've been working on. This is just an update to the parking regulations, not actual like size and that sort. We just had a parking update with our zoning regulations. This is more of the enforcement side of things. So it was originally brought because we were dealing with some citizens trying to put up their own signage. And so it was to specifically address that. But as we got into the update, we realized that there were some other areas that needed to be addressed as well. And due to the volume of those changes, we just decided to do a repeal and replace strategy and pull the parking section and basically rewrite that chapter of the title. So the first aspect was the traffic control device signs. Basically, we are saying that only the city is allowed to post and enforce those parking regulations and put up those suitable traffic control devices, and no person other than the city engineer, department head or their designee, police or their duly authorized agents can place those or any sort of traffic control device on a public street by signs, marking lights, printed instructions, trying to regulate the parking of vehicles. The second new section was to allow for pavement marking. We don't have a lot of pavement markings in the city. We do have some right over here by the church at the corner. Basically, it's just to authorize curb painting to indicate loading zones, no parking zones, that sort of thing. A section that we updated was just these general parking regulations. There's not really any substantive changes in there from our current code. It's more organizational to define these are the locations where you can't stop, stand, or park your car, and these are the locations where you can't do that unless you're loading or unloading. And so we sort of group those into those two kind of subcategories. We also adjusted some of the regulations regarding parallel parking to make it clear where you can parallel park and where you need to park and which direction you need to park on a one-way versus a two-way. So we adjusted that. Updated section, our time limitation. We are recommending changing it from 24 to 48 hours, just to give a bit more time. It's more in line with other jurisdictions as far as the amount of time before parking on public streets. So this is the current code, and this is the new code. It's simplified because we also have a definition section where we define these terms. And so by defining these terms, we can say that we can basically shorten the section in the code. Updated the section on parking on private property. Again, not necessarily changing the substance, but basically just making an adjustment. The existing code had the penalty is different for this section, and so the existing code under the penalty section basically said this section is a misdemeanor, and so what we've done is just moved that misdemeanor provision up into that section so that it's any person who violates a provision of this section will be deemed a misdemeanor. So it adds that section D. City parks and fees. You guys just went through some new fee adoptions where we changed the code to allow for fees for the boat launch, as well as some season pass provisions and giving season passes to residents and that sort of thing. Currently, we did that, but our code, there is a conflict because our code says that we can't charge fees for boat launches. And so basically we've updated that to allow for city council to adopt park or boat launch fees by resolution. And so that is in there. Also, there was a slight change to what was in the packet. In the packet, we had on that section C, the season pass attached to its windshield. Parks Department is actually going with some placards that'll hang from the rear view mirror, sort of like a handicap placard. And so I pulled out the attached to the windshield and just said, if you have a season pass, it's access. So that's one minor change. And then again, the violations and penalty right now, currently it's a civil citation payable to the city, and if it's not paid, we can cite you with an infraction, or if a subsequent violation occurs, it can be cited as an infraction. The largest issue with that is that there's no appeal process, and so there's no due process for somebody who's issued with a civil citation to kind of challenge that. And so we updated that to basically provide for how those citations get issued, who can issue them, and how they can be appealed, while also preserving the ability for officers to cite it as an infraction in their discretion. So, and then finally, Under a different section, this is the different chapter, chapter 40, there was a provision talking about parking on the sidewalk. Basically, we're just removing that reference to parking because now we're addressing it in the parking area. And that concludes it. The rest of the ordinance will be updated finally. The title wasn't done, and some of the whereas clauses will need to be updated, and that'll come back before you. But if you have any questions.
So, Field, tonight, are you looking for a motion to update the code, or will you bring it back?
It'll be brought back, so it'll be just a motion to proceed and bring it back.
Okay. Joe?
Question on boats and RVs, there's a section in there that says any unlicensed vehicle can't be parked on anywhere in the property unless it's fully enclosed, unless it's one licensed boat or one licensed recreational vehicle, then it can be parked on the side or back of the property. Does the 48-hour provision apply there as well? So if somebody has a boat parked in their driveway for a day, can somebody call you guys and give them a ticket?
Nope, it's only for parking on the street. So the provision you're talking about is under the private property. That is, you're parking on your side yard or side area, that is not affected by the time limitation. The time limitation is only on the public rights of way.
Okay, so in the code, if I read it right, it says if you have a licensed boat or RV, it has to be on the side or back of your property. So what if somebody has a boat parked in their driveway for 3 days?
The driveway would be their private property, so.
So why does that section indicate side or back of property?
Because it's an either or. You can have it parked in your driveway. You could have, if you have a side yard, you could have it parked in your side yard as long as it's licensed.
So driveway is clear?
Mhm.
Okay.
Any questions?
And I should also note that's.
I don't own a
that's
boat or an
not
RV, by
changed.
the way. But-
We didn't change anything to that other than updating the definitions, but that is current existing code that we're not changing. So.
Thanks.
Yes? I'd entertain a motion.
I'd move to direct staff to bring back ordinance for the parking code update.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Walker.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Field.
Thanks.
Administrative staff report, supply chain impacts.
It's citizen issues.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one. I'm retired now, so I just lose track of sense. Citizens issue. Anybody wishing to address the council on a non-agenda related item?
Always one.
Name again for the record.
Howard
please.
Burns, Post Falls. I'm here to fulfill a promise to my wife, who drives a low-slung sedan, regular old sedan, and she's short. And we just went around in Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene. We enjoy the roundabouts we've discussed here. And she made the comment that you can actually see who's coming from the other side. I can't because of all the undergrowth and stuff in the middle of the roundabouts. And so I would ask you to think about it on the roundabouts, to keep the median in the middle, keep it down so that people can see across. Because she made me go out and experience her car, and it's difficult. You miss a lot when you're not sitting up high when the growth, and there's some places where you just can't see it. A couple of the ones on Celtice, there's giant growth in the middle or something. So I would ask you to consider that when you're doing the roundabouts. And I have fulfilled my obligation. Thank you.
Do you need a note to bring back to your wife?
That's it, that's correct.
Can I
Thank
mention
you.
something to him?
Yes.
Mr. Burns, sometimes in the middle, Mr. Burns, sometimes in the middle of the roundabout, there are boulders. And that's so she doesn't have to worry, because even if she can't see, there's not going to be a vehicle going straight across, which they have tried to do.
Oh, well, that she hasn't tried, and I haven't either.
Anyone else? Seeing none, now we get down to supply chain issues. Mr. Beecham.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm John Beecham, Public Works Director. I am not a supply chain expert, but I am going to talk a little bit about some of the supply chain issues we are seeing and then some of the things we're doing to mitigate those. No action requested tonight, just trying to make you aware of some of the things we're working on kind of behind the scenes that you may or may not ever know about. So. Generically here, I'm just talking about things that are difficult to obtain. So we could say supply chain issues, that really indicates that there's logistics problems, but there's a lot of other compounding factors right now that are going into some of these things. And we'll talk through some of those, general and specific, and then, like I said, what we're doing about them. As you know, causes for these, like I mentioned, these are varied. And some of it goes a little bit even beyond what you might expect. Trouble getting concrete installed turned out to be a COVID-related thing where a subcontractor to the rebar supplier, who was actually in a foreign country, had sent all their workers home for a couple weeks. So the design engineer for the rebar wasn't able to design the rebar, even though the rebar guys were available to come and install it. So we've seen weird stuff happen in the last couple of years. Some of this is tied to a couple of big weather events you might have heard about. The Texas freeze last winter caused issues with petroleum manufacturing, which affects actually pipe manufacturing. So PVC pipe is really difficult to get. Anything that had chlorine involved with it was really difficult to get. PVC pipe has chlorine as a component of it. So all of these sort of together have created a lot of difficulties, as some of you well know, in just doing normal business. You can generally categorize these into pricing issues. So we're seeing crazy prices for things. And my next slide mentions tires, but tires are a good example. If you can find tires, they're at a premium right now. We've had experiences where we need a set of tires for a new vehicle, or for a vehicle we've had for a while. We go out to get tires for it, and there's one set available. It's got white letters on it, and it looks fancy. It's what we can buy. So do you want it, or do you want to wait 6 weeks and maybe get tires in 6 weeks? If there's only one available, the price goes up, as you would imagine. We're seeing delays, not just shipping difficulties, but component delays. So with our tertiary project we're working on right now, upgrading the water reclamation facility, the power control box and motor control center is at the factory, done at the factory, moved on to the integrator who programs it all, and it ended up being shipped without a couple of cards because they don't have chips to go in the cards to put it in there. So the workaround there is to test it without the card, move a similar card around to 3 different places while we test it, keep it moving forward, but it creates more work for everybody basically than having a finished product to work with. Had a bid opening and bid award this afternoon, or sorry, a project was awarded at this meeting. The construction market, as you've seen, has tightened up a lot. We, a year or so ago, would have 8, 9 bidders on a project. We had 2 bidders on the Spokane and Prairie project. We've seen that with interest in projects that are through the pipeline. Pre-qualification numbers are down as well. So the challenge with a tight construction market is, again, prices. Part of the reason there's a tight construction market is labor shortage. Part of it is also challenging for contractors to get the parts to do work right now. So some of them just aren't bidding on things. And then operational repairs. This is I guess it kind of goes without saying, but we're having trouble not just with constructing things, but with maintaining the stuff we have on a day-to-day basis. So oil filters for Ford for a couple of weeks were not available. So no oil changes occurred on city Fords for a couple of weeks. And just little things that have kind of become problematic. I won't go into as much detail on these if I've mentioned them before, but finding vehicles is challenging. Talk about tires. Fuel and oil is currently on everybody's mind, and pricing for fleet on that is a concern. Repair parts are, I can't stress this enough. We don't always know what's going to break, and it is cost prohibitive for us to have a spare everything. So we've got a big conveyor belt or conveyor drive screw that loads biosolids into a dump truck at the water reclamation facility. That broke. It's broken twice now in its lifetime. The last time we got new parts in, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks. The quote is 18 weeks to get parts now.
Wow.
So our backup plans are put in use. We're operating under the backup plans in that case. Anything with electrical gear is crazy right now. I don't know another word for it. We talked to the supplier for our membrane equipment that we're installing at the tertiary upgrade project. Our project has a little bit more guarantee, but he said the supplier of the automation equipment has stopped giving prices or timelines for when they can provide things. So you call them up and you say, hey, I've got a project I'd like to know about how long it takes to get. We can make them. So that's all they'll give. I'll talk about some solutions too. I feel like I'm just presenting problems, but I kind of want to give the scope of the problems. The cost of metal, as you know, has gone up tremendously the last year. Where we've really seen that sort of rubber hit the road is with electrical wire. So with the price of copper going skyrocketing, it has made the price of electrical wire also skyrocket. Tag-on effect is all other wire becomes more expensive, because if people stop using copper and switch to aluminum, then the price of aluminum wire goes up. So we've definitely seen that or heard about that from our electrical subs, especially on that big tertiary project. And I mentioned PVC pipe. So we are actively working on this, and this is not an exhaustive list, but a few things I guess I wanted to talk through and bring to your attention. The first thing we're doing is trying to partner with contractors. So I mentioned the copper and aluminum. Aluminum wire is cheaper than copper right now. And we've entertained proposals to switch from copper wire to aluminum on a job. If it makes sense for the electrician to do that, and it's cost effective and it makes operational sense for us, that's sort of our first question is, are we going to get a lesser product if we do that? So long as we're still getting a good product out of something, we're entertaining that sort of a proposal from a contractor that we had this option for you. It's become really impractical for us to do that. I'm not sure we can do the job if we do that, but we have this other idea. Trying to be good business partners with them seems to go a long way. We're trying it out on a new scale right now, but it's worked well for us on past projects to try to find a reasonable solution to where we're not bankrupting people or putting them in a position where they can't in good conscience move forward with the job. That is getting pretty creative with our tertiary project, and in the near future we'll bring you a proposal to make a pretty big change to the electrical system. We'll probably bring that forward so long as the contractor is able to provide something we can recommend to you. Alternative designs, that's kind of what I was talking about there. If there's a different widget that will work for us. Another thing is to switch materials. So on the outfall project, we originally had a steel, a ductile iron diffuser section that went down to the river. It was proposed that we can't get steel right now, but we can get HDPE pipe, and engineer went through, vetted that, and said, yeah, this is similar life for you, similar value. We were able to actually obtain it, get that installed in the river last fall. Things we're considering as we go into construction projects are to extend a contract window. So not necessarily a construction window, but a contract window, where a lift station project might have been a 6-month project last summer. We're considering making it a 9-month or a 12-month project. And the first 3 months, they just determine what equipment they need to get and get it on the way. They still have that 4-month construction window the following summer, but that allows them some certainty that they'll be able to actually get the materials they need by the time they build something. We are talking about postponing projects, postponing upgrades to our facility. Where that's viable, we entertain it. Some of these things are like fixing a lift station that's broken at the end of its service life. Postponing is a challenge. It costs us money to do that also. We're looking into, but haven't yet gone down the road of pre-procurement. So I mentioned electrical equipment has a lead time of who knows right now. So we could get the system designed and the city could buy that electrical equipment. When it arrives or when we know when it'll arrive, we can bid the project out and just require that they install that piece. The challenge with that is we have to get it exactly right. If we get the wrong thing and ask them to install it, a square peg round hole sort of thing, then we are exposed, as it would be, to a change order, and they can say it's $1 million to put a square peg in a round hole. And unfortunately, we've bought a square peg, so not saying it would be $1 million, but there would be a cost to that. It could be. And the other thing we're doing is redundant systems while we're awaiting parts. I mentioned that screw conveyor to load the biosolids into the dump truck. Our redundant system is we spill that onto the floor of a storage building, which is not odor controlled, and it is our old system. It is reliable, the floor works. So we can continue using that, dependent on, we're going back to older technology. So as long as our redundant system is something we can rely on, that works. Where we have maybe older equipment that we're relying on as a backup, that's more of a challenge. Future outlook for this, not getting better this year, is my educated opinion. Obviously, the oil and energy related things with the Ukraine conflict are headed maybe the wrong direction again. There's an indirect association with energy prices on things like pipe, which is tied to refining. You have to be able to make chemicals to put into plastic pipe. And there's also energy that goes into manufacturing concrete, so you see concrete prices go up, that sort of thing. The other thing we heard about is, I'm going to get the percentages wrong, a lot of the world's nickel is mined in Russia. So the number that I do remember is, contractor told us the price of nickel went up 90% in 3 days a couple weeks ago. So nickel is a key component of stainless. We use a lot of stainless in water and wastewater projects. So that is another future dilemma, sort of hasn't been as bad, might get worse. As our strategy, like I said, we're gonna continue to try and be good partners with our contractors. Some of that might mean come back to you and say, when we bid this, it looked like this. We're trying to move this forward, and there might be some financial thing that we're looking to partner with on the contractor there. Seeking creative alternatives, and then looking for off-ramps too. So some projects that if we recognize might not be a good time to bid it, we're looking for ways to put things on the shelf for a while until it is the time to bid it. I've got 2 of these in there. Going backward. That's it.
Any questions, John?
Tough
I
road.
guess you've proven we can't blame you for the
Yeah.
supply chain problems, so.
If you do have questions, let me know.
Well, it's depressing out there, so I feel you.
I appreciate you hanging in there and looking for alternative ways to get things done. That means a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mayor and council comments. It's the best time of the year right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're now at daylight savings. It's dark now, but it was lighter. We can expect sunshine. And the Zags tip off on Thursday. So, as long as there's basketball this week and the next few weeks, life is good. So that was my only comment. How about council comments?
And baseball.
Oh, it's back, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got a player agreement, so
Yeah.
that's good news.
We do need an executive session.
How long?
15.
15? I would move to enter into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74-206-1F to communicate with legal counsel for the public agency to discuss the legal ramifications of and legal options of pending litigation or controversies not yet being litigated but imminently likely to be litigated, and no action will be taken during the session. that will last approximately 15 minutes.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Rhiannon, please take the roll.
Malloy.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Motion passed, we'll enter executive. Rhiannon, thank you. call the meeting back to order. Are there any motions to come forward?
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.